So how did everyone go with the mindfulness stuff? Did everyone have a bit of a practice? Yeah? Just being aware of yourself. So it's kind of been about becoming aware. And then what we're going to do today is learn to call yourself back. So when there's been a reality that hasn't come to pass, or there's been something that's happened, you can leave pieces of yourself all over. So it'll typically be you've had a value in the past, or you have a value that you appear in the future that your mind values more than the present moment, and then your mind's going to go and live in that reality even though you're not there. So you got to live in this reality, this present moment, and go out from here. The mind sort of needs a bit of training to do that. So the process is calling yourself back. Does that make sense? So you can sort of there's lots of places you can leave yourself, good and bad. So bad would obviously be trauma. So if you've gone through a bad breakup, if you've been the victim of any abuse, if you've had anything horrible happen in your childhood or your life, and you can obviously leave parts of yourself which are going to act as a trigger, which you're going to lose a part of yourself in that reality, and that's going to prevent you from being present. So there's also, we're not really addressing that here, like it's part of the process, but it's quite a heavy place to go when you don't have the tools to be able to call yourself back. So oftentimes the harder places to call yourself back from are the good bits. So the happy times in your life where you might have had a really enjoyable experience. So for instance, I lived in Whistler for a couple of years, and it was awesome. And if you're going to leave a part of yourself in these good experiences in your life, you're going to go through your whole life wishing you were there. So you're going to measure everything up to the good experience of your life, and then you're not creating anything else. And you hear about it all the time, about your retired athletes who have left themselves in their preliminary games, because that's when they felt like they were a person and they had a direction and a sense. And you can be speaking to 80-year-olds who have never called themselves back from being 20 years old. So they've lived their whole life not really present because they had such a good time in their 20s. So being able to call yourself back from the good things is just as important. And you can sort of understand the awareness through the mindfulness. So becoming aware of where your mind might be wandering off to, and then there might be certain things that you'd want to call yourself back from first, and then you can get the tools to address the more heavy stuff if that's what you want to do. You can also, if you've been in a relationship, two people get intermingled. So you have a mix of two people, two energies. You kind of share a heart in some ways. And when two people break up or go their own ways, you have to call that part of yourself back. Otherwise, you're going to consistently live as that as part of your reality. So you'll probably be attracted to people that look like that kind of person or have the traits, or you'll never actually have another connection with a person because you've left that part of yourself with that partner. So you can use this tool for loads of things, good and bad, but we're just going to start with some sort of easier stuff. So you can think back to what we were talking about last week. So we have a Chikana, space-time, space-time, space-time. So we have mind, Hujupacha, body, Kaipacha, and spirit, Almak Pacha. I'll just put spirit into that, which is in an interconnected world. So mind, body, spirit. And then like the yin yang, we have masculine, feminine, mind, body, spirit. Okay, so like I said, we're trying to live a well-balanced life of being in your middle or in your center. So it means not being completely identified with the mind or the body or the spirit, and living in a well harmonic existence. So in any time in your life, you can live in any of these planes, and you can leave yourself anywhere. So you can think about it as calling yourself back to where you are now. So mind, body, spirit. The first part is what we did last week, is learning that mindfulness and that awareness of being present. And then sort of next we're going to journey to bring those parts of us back. Does that make sense? Does everyone have some ideas as to where they might be having to call themselves back from? So can be a job, partner, can be anything you really identify with. So if you think you might have an identification with something particular, that's something you can call yourself back from, because it can act as a limitation into being present and open to experience. Does that make sense? Okay. So for what we're going to do, we're just going to kind of connect with, like we did last week, where we understand where we are. So find our center, and then we're just going to step into the back of our mind, and then just watch where the mind wants to go. If you have an idea as to where you want to call yourself back from, try and visualize this place. So whether it's in the past or the future or wherever, by making it as real as you can with all of your senses. So think about what you might be seeing, touching, hearing, tasting. Who else is there? Oh, smelling, yeah, good. Thanks. Smelling. So who's there? And we're just going to try and change. You can think we're trying to change the vibration of this experience. So sometimes if it's a heavy experience, you want to change it to one of gratitude or love. So I'll share. I had to call myself back because I lost my father at quite a young age. So my experience as a young child was I walked into my house and my dad was dead and the whole family was crying. So it was this big, like, you walk in and you get this big stress, like boom, you've just been hit by this massive moment. And I only got to address this recently, like a couple of years ago, and I did that in Peru. But I had to change my experience, because my experience of that event was that it was one of acute sadness, and it was this heavy, horrible experience. So that any trigger I would have with my dad would trigger sadness, and it would trigger that same experience of a heaviness. And it's the same, it's just your perspective of the event. So if you can change your perspective of what you're calling yourself back from, that part of you can come back into the present moment, and you then change the trigger. So you can have as many triggers as you can imagine, and calling yourself back isn't something you do once or twice. It's a skill that you can continuously do. You might lose parts of yourself, like with some mates on the weekend. You might be at work, you're wishing you were having beers with your friends on the weekend still. You've just lost a part of yourself. So you're no longer present at work. Does that make sense? And you can do it all the time. You can have to call yourself back from the dreams. You could have a really good dream, and then you might spend your day thinking about your dream, and then you're not present. You have to call yourself back from your dream. So it's sort of a pattern, and the more you do it, it's a bit like brushing your teeth or having a coffee in the morning. It'll become a natural thing. You go, okay, I'll just call myself back into that moment. So yeah, you can go as deep as you like, but I'd recommend just going into some easy stuff, just some superficial, and then if you like, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then if you would like to go very deep, I'd encourage you to do it with someone, like in a ceremony, or with someone who's skilled and trained in it. But for now, we're just learning some basic stuff. Okay, any questions?